going on, everybody? It is another episode of the 5280 podcast. It is a two-man show here tonight. It is both Gage and I. Mike had some family reasons for not being on the pod, and Glenn was, at least as of 6:30 Mountain Time, he was feeling great, and then he texted and said he's just not feeling all the greatest, so he is out tonight. So it is the two people of myself and Gage that'll be manning the comments section and, of course, manning the show here for you. Before we dive into any of all of that, we want to let you guys know to hit the subscribe button for the MHRT Network page. Over there, there's a join feature as well. So, in essence, a membership, and that you can select whichever one that you feel like, which is a $2.99, $6.99, and I believe a $12.99. Feel free to select whatever it is that you feel on that one. There's no pressure which one you choose. And also, we are going live on Gage's Broncos Syndicate YouTube channel. Something tells me we might have a vast majority of comments from his YouTube channel on the show. So anybody that is actually watching that, thank you guys so much for watching the 5280 podcast right here on the MHRT Network and, of course, the Broncos Syndicate. Before we dive into anything else, Gage, it seems like it's been a minute since we've talked ball, or that I've seen you a little bit. So, how you doing?
Good, man. Yeah, it definitely has been a minute since we've done the podcast, and I know the content has been a little bit sparse on Broncos Syndicate. Been dealing with some crap in the personal life, may or may not be moving, so just kind of a pain in the ass, but doing good, excited to talk some ball, and excited to just get back in the normal work routine.
Yeah, should be fine. And man, it feels so good to actually know that is actually victory lap this time on some of those comments. So victory lap, thank you so much for hopping in the chat. We should probably start it off. One of the things that was not in our rundown. We should probably lead off first because it's the hottest news. It's the hottest breaking news that came from the Denver Broncos themselves, and it kind of sent a bit of a bombshell with the fan base, and of course maybe the team as well. But I would have to bet that this has been something that's been in the cards for quite some time, and would explain why the Broncos maybe weren't as hot on the trail when it came to the linebacker position. Gage, the Broncos made the decision to move Jonah Ellis to linebacker, inside linebacker, maybe even outside linebacker, almost as an off-ball linebacker. It's very interesting. We had Marquee Sports on last week, and we talked about that, and it was just a really nice little conversation, really kind of like a very honest conversation about how we felt. It's a very peculiar move, but it's a very fascinating one at the same time. So what was your take, when you kind of heard the news, of Jonah Ellis's move to inside linebacker or off-ball linebacker, if you will?
Well, I think when you evaluate the edge rush position and the off-ball linebacker position, they're both areas where I feel like some tweaks were necessary. The edge rush position, it's just because you have a player in Q Robinson who is barely getting playing time, even though he's got a lot of potential.
Jonah Ellis, too, to be fair.
Say again?
I was going to say, and Jonah Ellis, too, to be fair.
Well, yes, but Jonah Ellis factors into this equation in a different way. But Robinson, they really like what he can bring from the edge rush position, what he can bring as a pass rusher. And Johnny Walker as well. Richie just mentioned him, a guy that I really, really like. The Broncos signed him as an undrafted free agent out of Missouri. This edge rush room is super crowded. So the linebacker room, there's not really a clear-cut third off-ball linebacker outside of your two starters in Justin Sternad and Alex Singleton. You've got a bunch of lottery ticket players like Drew Sanders, Lavelle Bailey, Jordan Turner, Corinne Reed, but all of those guys are just kind of, again, lottery ticket players. I feel like Jonah Ellis, what he brings to the table from an athletic perspective, he can be a decent sideline to sideline player. As a pass rusher, we know that he can bring good qualities of the blitzer. What can he do as a run defender from the linebacker position? Because it's very different defending the run from the second level as opposed to sending the run from the edge or defending the run from the edge. So I just feel like this is a really interesting experiment, and some fans will point to the whole Drew Sanders thing where we're bouncing him back and forth from off ball to edge, and he finally settled back down at off ball. I think that Ellis has shown a little bit more potential as a player than Sanders, and he might have a little bit better chance to make it at his new position than Sanders did.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because I would just say it's very rare. It is very rare of stories. To be blunt, it is very rare of stories where a player changes positions and it works relatively well, right? Like relatively well. Like it may work, but it's not one like all of a sudden he turns into this all-pro player or this Pro Bowl player. There are some exceptions, and we'll talk about some of those exceptions. And one of the exceptions, if you will, might actually end up having a tie to Sean Payton. But like as far as some of the other stuff, it's very rare that something like that happens. And I think when you look at Jonah Ellis, you got to look at specifically history. And I know, there's definitely some cases where, said person in the family or people in the family have played this position before. That means Jonah Ellis is going to end up being an inside linebacker. Excuse me. It doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean is that what better soundboards in your life do you need than two of arguably some of the best linebackers and young linebackers in the NFL right now, in Christian Ellis and Caden Ellis, of all people, who had ties to Sean Payton, if you will, being a 7th-round draft pick in 2019, going back to Jonah Ellis. So it makes me wonder. There's a lot of things that have been going through my mind, and I don't know if it's true or not. This is just more speculative on my end, but I wonder if, hypothetically, the Broncos were heavily interested in Caden Ellis. The Sean Payton connection. They needed a linebacker, if you will. And I wonder if Caden specifically said, "You have an Ellis who could play linebacker. He's at home. You might as well give it a shot." And I wonder if that was just more so a conversation because Caden knew Sean and had a conversation with Sean, and then ended up being, with Vance Joseph or something. And then that's where we really kind of got the ball rolling, where they really weren't interested in some of these free agents at linebacker. And then, of course, the other anomaly, if you will, also has ties to Sean Payton, and that is Zach Bond. Zach Bond is a player who turned himself to be obviously better than the bunch of Christian Ellis and Caden Ellis, if you will. But, he turned himself to be a really good off-ball linebacker. Was a free agent this last offseason. The Broncos were heavily interested in him, when it came to that. And, so much so that the decision became Eagles or Broncos. That's what it kind of came down to. And so I think it's ultimately one that I think is going to be very fascinating. And if there's one person, frankly, that probably would know that answer, is an article that just popped up by Luca Evans, and that would be Kyle Whittingham, who spoke glowingly about the idea of Jonah Ellis's transition to linebacker, who really never played at Utah, but Whittingham knows that he's got a lot of tools in his toolkit to be that off-ball inside linebacker.
Yeah, and he definitely showed those tools on tape as we went through last season. He dropped back in coverage, like Richie pointed out, and made a few splash plays. So I feel like he definitely showed that potential, and the coaching staff was like, okay, we can work with this, and we can mold it into a really good player at that position. So I think that the Broncos have really good defensive coaching. We know that for a fact, and if they can make this work, it's yet another feather in their cap.
Yeah, and So it really does, beg the question as far as, are they done? Like, are they done adding to this room, or does this cause something, hypothetically, where they actually add a veteran edge rusher to the room, or someone where it's more so they added to the linebacker room, and instead of adding one player to the edge room, or one player to replace John Franklin Myers, you're replacing him with two, with a veteran presence on the edge and a veteran presence on the inside, aka Cam Jordan. And there have been some Cam Jordan rumors that have been percolating a little bit, some via fans, some stuff here and there. Nothing of merit of, at least of now, in terms of like that's really gotten kind of like the ball rolling, if you will. But a lot of people have speculated. And now with the Jonah Ellis move, Gage, it seems like if the Broncos don't make a move for an edge player, or maybe even a defensive lineman, if you will, until maybe like later day 3 or something, then it seems like a guy like a Cam Jordan would make a lot of sense. Cam Jordan, or even a Calais Campbell, I would say. Calais Campbell or even Cam Jordan would make a lot of sense for this team right now, based on their playoff hunt and everything, as far as, possibly replacing, a John Franklin Myers, possibly.
Of course, both of those guys are high-end locker room dudes that bring a high character to the team, and they are beloved by pretty much every organization they've played for. Of course, Jordan's only played for one NFL organization. Calais has kind of been around the block, but they're all beloved in each stop they've been at. Cam Jordan would make a lot of sense from a locker room perspective. He would also make a lot of sense from just knowing coaches in this building. I don't know if he would make sense from a schematic perspective, because he's mostly a 4-3 edge rusher. If you kick him inside, sure. I don't know if he wants to be kicked inside, though. That's the one thing that kind of hesitates me a little bit from Cam Jordan. But when you look at Calais Campbell, he's an interior defensive lineman all the way. He could definitely fill that need. And, of course, he's got the ties to Denver, this being his hometown team, alum of South High School. I would definitely love to have Campbell here just for sentimental reasons. And it's kind of the same thing with another veteran player who we haven't mentioned yet, and it's kind of a shame we haven't, and that's Von Miller. If they're going to bring in a veteran edge rusher, which I want to make clear, I don't think they're going to do, but if they're going to bring in a veteran edge rusher, you got to bring Von home, man. He wants to come back. He can still rush the passer. The dude had 9 sacks last year, and he can be a third down nightmare on the opposite side of Nick Bonito. So if they're going to bring back a veteran edge rusher, it's got to be Vaughn. I just think that with the depth they have at that position, the fact that they just moved a guy from that position because of the depth that they have, it just doesn't make sense for the edge. Now, on the interior, you could certainly look at Jordan, and you could certainly look at Calais. That would probably be my top target, being Calais.
But it does make you wonder. So despite the fact with Bonito, and despite the fact with, Cooper, it still wouldn't hurt to have a bit of a veteran presence right there, right? Like, there were a lot of players that were on that defensive line with the Rams, right? Like with that trade or whatever that the Broncos sent Vaughn, right? And obviously the Broncos made out a little bit like a bandit too in that trade as well. Well, there were some vets in that room where Vaughn, who still had a lot left in the tank, but there were guys like Aaron Donald in that room, and other vets. There were, I believe, even Leonard Floyd, Bronco legend, was even in that room as well. So like it just kind of became, or sorry, not Leonard Floyd. I meant who's the Oregon linebacker? Justin Hollins. That's who I was thinking of.
Leonard Floyd and Justin Hollins, two
very different names and maybe similar players. No, it's just like I think at some point a veteran presence is still needed for a little bit, and it's very clear for at least 2 years, if not more, ever since, or even more, if you will, since he's left Denver. Vaughn has made it known he wants to come back and be a member of the Broncos. It is very known. But I think that it's one thing that I'm very curious about, because would I be upset if they added to the room like a guy like a Von Miller? Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. Would I be upset if they even, on top of that, get a guy like a Cam Jordan or even a Calais Campbell? Absolutely not. And I think the thing is they can afford them. They can afford both of them, because they're all just going to be getting a 1-year deal, maybe worth a bit of some incentives for both of them. That's going to be upwards of maybe 10 million or something. But it's just like, that's only this year, right? Like, that's only this year, and that contract is going to be off the books. So anybody that says that, cap space or whatever is going to be affected for next year, it's just a 1-year thing. Just a 1-year thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm very curious about it. And I will say this about the Calais Campbell thing. From a production standpoint, if it was me, I'm taking Calais Campbell over Cam Jordan without batting an eye.
Yeah.
The amount of, when you get a chance, for anybody that gets a chance, all it takes is Google, is to do a Google search right now and search up and say, like, who are some of the best sack leaders over the course of history in NFL, and take a look at some of the sacks over the course of his career for Calais Campbell and the amount of players that he's paired with in that line of sack leaders. It is a tremendous list. Obviously, sacks don't really tell the story, but is the story when it comes to popularity and everything else. And he's up there with some really good names, Hall of Fame level names. But so I am definitely in favor of a guy like a Calais Campbell, or even obviously a Cam Jordan. But the other side of it too is, like, if they wanted to draft someone, or frankly, I know it sounds risky, if they wanted to draft another edge rusher, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised by it.
Hell, they could do it at 62.
Mm-hmm.
They've had success drafting edge rushers in that very area. They drafted Benito at 64. So that's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities. I don't think anybody expected Denver to take a slot corner in the first round of the draft last year.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
Yep. Regarding some of the other stuff to talk about, speaking of defensive line, well, one of the players is a bit younger. He's a bit younger than Cam Jordan and and of course Von Miller. But he might actually cost a lot. And I realized that I was just kind of poking the bear a little bit, when I posted my mock draft of just saying, yeah, I mean, sure, why not? But how realistic of a trade would you say from a percentage standpoint, Gage? I know the answer, but just like from a realistic standpoint of a Dexter Lawrence trade, even from the Giants.
I mean, him getting traded from the Giants, I'd put that at maybe 20%. Harbaugh came out and said that it probably isn't going to happen. Both parties ultimately want to get to the point of him staying in New York. But as far as Sexy Dexy coming to the Broncos, I'd put that at about a 2%. Anything's possible, right? But you'd have to give up a first-round pick to get him. He's a premium interior defensive lineman. Those guys are very, very hard to come by. He's somebody who can stuff the run, somebody who can rush the passer. He is a literal game wrecker on the interior. I would love to have him here. Oh, yeah. Trust me. I have been begging for another game wrecker like that alongside Zach Allen. And JFM was plenty good in that position. Sexy Dexy playing potentially on the opposite side of Zach Allen, but it is a little redundant too because he's a bigger player. Would he be playing nose? Would he be playing 3 technique? Like, where would you put him on that defensive line given the structure of this Broncos D-line? That's another question that I have. But, oh my God, dude. Dexter Lawrence in a Broncos uniform would be a dream. Unfortunately, that's all it's going to end up being is a dream.
That's why I was surprised that in the trade that I had in Pro Football Focus, which you can, everything was basically the 2 like I want to say it was like the 2/4, or no, our second round pick, and then one of our fourth round picks, which is like 108 or 111, for Dexter. If that's all it took, sign me up. Sign me up. And then also too, like with it also being just the 2026 draft capital, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Wasn't it Mario that put that out?
No, I did a
you did that one?
I did a mock draft that only included 62 and like 108 or 111. I can't remember. And they took it. Like they took it. No player. Mario was the one who offered, I believe it was like 62 and Marvin Mims.
That's right. That's right.
For Dexter or something. And yeah.
Well, I commented on that tweet and I said they would immediately tell George Payton to go fuck off. Like that would be an absolute no.
That said, I do have to ask this question because Vince brought it up in the comments, and I have to. And maybe what we do is we'll end the show with obviously a really good question because it's deserving, and maybe I go into my own mainly Broncos laboratory for the clip for it. But anyway, Vince brings up: do you think we move up in round 2, or do you think we'll be relatively conservative? And this is. I don't know this answer, Gage, but one of the things that I've kind of felt is that if they were really kind of standing pat, if you will, and for all intents and purposes, everything that I've kind of gotten the hint of with them not really making any moves aside from signing their own guys is that they wanted to make sure financially they can be able to fit Jalen Waddle's contract within this. And they obviously could. They just wanted to make sure it was all working within the timetable and everything as far as how long they were working the trade. That said, they were aggressive. They did this trade. They traded the first round pick. The point I'm trying to make is I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that this particular year, the Broncos are pretty aggressive to try and acquire some capital as much as they can, or a key player that they want, if you will, within day 2, or maybe even not day 2, but taking 1 or 2 of their fourth round picks, and then trading them up to go into the third round on day 2, which I think is a little bit more of the easier one to predict. But I would not rule out still the Broncos being aggressive to what Vince is saying, or asking, if you will, and saying that they trade up in the second round for a player that will not be there at 62 that they absolutely love.
George Payton likes to preach this a lot. They like to be aggressive, but they don't like to be reckless. Could we see them move up if the player they really like is within striking distance? Sure. But just like the chat's talking about, the 2027 draft is...
Yeah. It's lethal. Like it is super lethal. Like the class from everything up and down might end up going down as one of the best draft classes of all time. You're good, Gage. Just got to fix the camera a little bit.
Yeah, the camera is just fuzzy, but my booty cheeks internet strikes again. So what I was saying... Yes, facts. What I was saying was the team likes to walk the line between being aggressive and being reckless. And the 2027 draft is really, really loaded. If there's a player they really like that's within striking distance, let's say in the 50s or somewhere like that, maybe they come up. But I don't think they're going to give up any 2027 draft capital to do it. Notice, when they made the Waddle trade, they did not give up any 2027 draft capital because they know how good that class is. And that class might be a little bit more valuable to reinforcing some of the needs on this roster that could pop up in the future, because you think about it, this is going to be their year where they're going all in. If they make it or not, they're going to have some guys who are going to be free agents. They've got some older players on the roster. That 2027 draft is going to be key to adding some premium positions. So I don't think they're going to want to be stupid and give up any draft capital this year So that's how I think they stand. They're going to be aggressive if somebody gets within striking distance, but it's going to be for the right price.
Big E asks if the Falcons do a surprise and they take Kenyon Sadiq, do you flip one of your 62s and draft Kyle Pitts? I know you're a huge fan of Kyle Pitts. They're going to extend him, Big E. They're going to extend him. And also, too, I've said it before, it's not that I don't like Kyle Pitts as a player and that I don't like that I like the fact that, he really became that player, that true player, that explosive player that he became with Atlanta this last year and earned that franchise tag. It's just the moment you bring him in, you have to move on from Evan Ingram. You have to move on from Evan Ingram, in my opinion. And if they do that, then obviously that'll free up some money for you and everything. I'm not saying it's a no, but I just think that from a no side of things, I think the Broncos would say no. And also, too, like there's the Davis-Webb connection with Evan Ingram. It just also seems like it's not in the cards right now for Kyle Pitts.
Well, I think that the Falcons, even if they draft a tight end, they're not going to move on from Kyle Pitts. Drafting a tight end who can play in line could unlock Kyle Pitts' potential. He is more of that move tight end, that receiving tight end who doesn't block. He's somebody who could truly focus on that role if they were to draft a Kenyon Sadiq. So I think it's very possible that Atlanta wants to run more 2-3 tight end sets. I know they brought back Austin Hooper as well. So by doing that, that's going to really unlock what Kyle Pitts is going to bring to your passing game. So I don't think it makes sense for Atlanta. Now, I would like to have Kyle Pitts in this offense, certainly, because Sean Payton could unlock that, and he would be the juiced-up, upgraded version of Evan Ingram, but I just don't think that the Broncos are going to make a deal like that.
Or let alone that the Falcons are going to let him go, because it seems pretty evident that they're going to extend him.
Exactly.
So with that, it seems fitting. And again, we are kind of rolling with, obviously we had a rundown, but we're kind of rolling with the idea of just, it's kind of leading to something else. And so this was something else, if you will, that you and I wanted to talk about. And it was just dropped with us that the Broncos. Okay. Let's just start with this. For anybody that says the Denver Broncos have no draft capital this year, this is not 2023 and this is not 2024. Please get that through your thick skull. The Broncos have 7 draft picks, not 5, not 4. They have 7. That is still decent draft capital to work with for going BPA and for what was asked by Vince as far as moving into the second round. It also allows you a little bit more flexibility to move into the third using one or both of your fourth-round picks to have possibly 2 day 2 selections of a player or two, if you will, that you have clearly fallen in love with, that maybe you feel like even though it's at 62, maybe you, I don't know, hypothetically had a first-round grade on this player that you had at 62. It's the Nick Benito thing, right? Like, he wasn't there at 60. We didn't think he'd be there at 62. So, but yeah, so I just think it's going to be very interesting. So to anybody, whether it's a Bronco fan or not, to anybody that says the Denver Broncos have no draft capital, they are a non-ball knower.
I mean, 7 picks is the typical amount of picks that you want to have going into a draft. Sure, they're not your typical rounds 1 through 7, but Denver still has premium draft capital. They've got a pick inside the top 100, and they've got 2 picks just outside the top 100 in 108 and 111. So it's not like they can't bring in impact players. And hell, if you draft well enough, you can find impact players in the 5th and 7th round as well. They don't have a 6th round pick this year, but they've got plenty of capital to work with, people. If you have good scouts And if you believe in your draft process, you have the ability to come away with multiple starters in this year's draft.
You would be surprised with everything that we see on everything Gage and I see on social media. There's
YouTube,
and sometimes even YouTube, of course. But like from what we've seen with, what is it, X, Twitter? I know you've seen it. I've seen it. There are people that are not Bronco fans that either rage baiting or commenting of just saying how, the Broncos have no draft capital, and it's like.
Yeah, because they traded for a freaking wide receiver.
Yeah. But it's still 7 picks. Like, what do you want? You want the Dolphins, draft picks who even without Waddle or even with Waddle, they still probably had about 10 draft picks, which is the most of right around most of anybody. It's
the New York Jets, they've got a bunch of draft picks.
Yeah. So
what draft picks are? They're lottery tickets.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just it's meaningless talk, and yeah, it's definitely it's surface talk, if you will. So that's probably the appropriate way to say it. So I bring that in to say that they have 7 picks, Gage, right?
Yes.
And I did see someone in here bring it up, and for anybody that does not know, and this is a bit of an appetizer or a bit of a preview, I will be on altitude adjustment tonight. And it'll be starting at about 8:15 over there at the Let's Talk Broncos channel. This particular question is going to be asked, and it seems fitting that, when it was given to us about the draft picks, that it's the novel concept, of what's next as far as like where the Broncos are going to go with, right? So let's just kind of go through a list of players. Let's go through a bit of a list of players of that we think we would take or we would consider at pick 62. And for people that are in the chat, feel free to jump in on what you would put as far as your picks at 62. And we'll definitely get them on the pod and we'll air them on the pod. And let's just start with this because I did see something in the comments about it, and it was Sam Roush at tight end. Yeah, so Sam Roush, we'll lead it off with Sam Roush.
Okay, so Sam Roush is a player that I really like. I did a video about him the other day because Chad Ryder had the Broncos taking him at 62 in his latest 5-round mock draft. So Roush is a guy who can play inline tight end. He's 6'7", 250 something pounds, I believe. He's a big, tall dude. And you look at his film, he's athletic. He's got really good run after catch ability. He was in a pro-style offense at Stanford, so he ran the full route tree. They had him running drags. They had him running corners. They had him running stop routes. They even had him splitting out wide and running a 9 route. So it's not like he's going to have to come in and learn how to play NFL football. He's got that experience under his belt. But what I question with him are his short arms. How are those going to limit his play, both as a contested catch guy, because he's a tall dude, you'd expect him to go out and be able to box out defenders, also as a blocker. He's got the willingness to block, but his technique is kind of all over the place from what I've seen with him. So I just feel like at 62, you might be taking a gamble on the upside. The upside is really good, though. He could mold into being an all-around tight end.
Yeah, well, and I think that the thing that's so fascinating when I've had conversations about this specific to the tight end position is they're going to be all across the board. And granted, I think you get that for the most part with any position, is that it's going to be, for the most part, relatively across the board for some teams, or rather consistent depending on with where things are. But when it's a deep class, like said tight end, something tells me that the rankings, the position rankings, player rankings, if you will, of that tight end position might actually be a bit different across the board. So some of these players that maybe we personally view as like a 5th round talent, 6th round talent, they might actually take there in like that third round just because that's how high they really valued him. I say that because, there's a player not at 62, but like there's a player that if you didn't like, or if you didn't get Sam Roush at 62 and you wanted to get him later, Nate Borkature. Go get Nate Borkature. Now, obviously, Roush was a little bit more productive, than Borkature. But, I mean, we're talking about a guy who he probably fits the age quality of, if you're going off of requirements, off of everything the Broncos have had the last couple of years. He fits the age requirements. He's 25 years old. But he had been with, two teams, one for about 5 years, one for, the 1 year. But he's a blocking tight end with some really high upside, some high catching upside. And you don't need to look no further than, some of his tape that he had down there in the Senior Bowl. I mean, he was mossing dudes. There was one drill that he had in the Senior Bowl, and I only know this because I was there. But like, he mossed a dude in what they would call an Oklahoma drill. And Oklahoma drills, for anybody that doesn't know, is like, I guess it's it's a mat drill, if you will. There's different mat drills. Like there's a tight end on a linebacker, running back on a linebacker, or even a tight end on a safety, if you will, or wide receiver on a corner. They just do different variations of it. Well, he was on a linebacker, and he mossed the linebacker with a physical catch to end the practice. And frankly, I'm not, am I biased a little bit in saying this, of course, but it's just, I've not seen a catch like that at that catch point since Rob Gronkowski. Like, that's the kind of catch that I saw when I was down there in person. I'm not saying that he's going to be, but it's just like, when you're that physical at a catch point, it seems you have tools. You have tools in that toolkit that you can be able to work with. And obviously the Broncos, maybe this is the year where we get a top 30 visit of people they draft. The Broncos have intrigue. They have very high intrigue when it comes to both, I guess, Sam Roush and Nate Borkature. So it'll be really interesting to see there for Roush specifically at 62.
It kind of feels like the old school blocking tight end. It's making its comeback in the NFL because Jackson Hawes last year coming out of Georgia Tech, one of the best blocking tight ends in a long time. He goes to Buffalo and has a really, really good rookie season. So I think a lot of teams out there are kind of trying to find the next Jackson Hawes, and maybe it's Borkature, maybe it's Roush. I like both of those guys. I have Roush a little bit higher than Borkature. I have Roush, I believe, as my tight end 6, and I have Borkature as my tight end 10, but still really good players.
I mean, I would probably have Roush in there with Max Clare, who I have, Roush in that Clare tier, which Clare's another one. If we're talking tight ends for 62, to where I think, frankly, the argument of Max Clare and Sam Roush there at 62 is a little bit closer than I think people think.
I don't know if Claire's going to be there, to be honest.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised. I saw Michael drop in Jacob Rodriguez, and here's the thing. I'd love it. You want to talk about to what Vince was saying about trading up for players that are going to be there in the second round. If the Broncos are really hell-bent on trading future capital and being this aggressive as they were in the F them picks, if you will, mentality, then Jacob Rodriguez will fit that bill. Jacob Rodriguez will fit the bill. And also Jadarian Price would fit that bill of players that the Broncos could very well want to trade up for high into that second round and get a Jacob Rodriguez and get a Jadarian Price. I say that just because, Gage, is when you have players that are considered boundary first-round talents, you can probably put 2 and 2 together for people that are in the chat. You can probably put 2 and 2 together. They will be there either at picks 24 to 32 or from 32 to like pick 48 or 50, meaning they're not going to be there when you select at 62.
Ready for my hot take? I think Jacob Rodriguez is a better linebacker than Sonny Styles. And I think Jacob Rodriguez has potential to be an all-pro in this in this league for a decade. I really do. I think that he's got elite upside as a sideline-to-sideline player. He's an athletic monster. He's got the football IQ. He's got everything you want out of a linebacker. I look at him and I think Bobby Wagner. I think Luke Kuechly. He is up there for me. So, yeah, I would love to get him, but I know there's going to be at least one team out of 32 that feels exactly how I do. He's going to go a lot higher than people think. I think he's going to go inside the top 15. I really believe that.
I wouldn't even would not even be. Oh, you're saying you think Jacob Rodriguez could surprise and be one of those surprise picks of the first round?
Yes,
and
I think there's going to be a team that loves him.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think if there's a really comfortable take, if you will, it's that I think Jacob Rodriguez goes in the first round. I may not say top 15, but he will go there in the first round, just because it's so hard to ignore everything you're talking about. Everything you're talking about with his high IQ, his character. I mean, everything that I saw at the Senior Bowl, everything checked the box for Jacob Rodriguez to be that guy initially that I wanted at 62. And sadly, that ship had sailed, and we're talking about a player that when it was the last practice, I believe it was Wednesday. It was Wednesday. The last day of Wednesday's practice, he had an interception, bad throw, but an interception, to end practice. And that's who he was, the right play at the right moment. That is who he was. If the Broncos do, as crazy as it sounds, for as much as we talk about it, if the Broncos only came away with Jacob Rodriguez and they traded up for Jacob Rodriguez, I wouldn't be upset at all. I would not be upset. I would not be upset at all. If that was their entire pick, would not be the least bit upset. So I think there's obviously players that they can, take. But yeah, I'm very, very high on Jacob Rodriguez. Let's go to some other players. Let's kind of continue the theme of linebacker here for a little bit. That's not Jacob Rodriguez. Who are some players that you would consider at 62?
So I definitely like Anthony Hill and I like Jeremiah Trotter as well. Those are a couple of guys.
Josiah Trotter, not his dad.
Josiah Trotter. I keep confusing that.
Yeah.
Josiah Trotter. I really like both of those guys, honestly. I've done videos on both of them. So if you guys want to hear my real in-depth thoughts on those players, I encourage you to go check out those videos that I did. But yeah, I feel like both of those guys could definitely be intriguing. Looking at my big board here, just give me 1 second. I think Golladay could be interesting there. Jake Golladay out of Cincinnati, but that might be a little bit rich for my blood. Bryce Betcher out of Oregon. So there are some really intriguing players there.
Maybe not at 62. Maybe not for Bryce Betcher at 62, but I love some Bryce Betcher, and he's a huge Bo Nix fan.
And I think the Broncos have visited with Betcher, if I'm not mistaken.
They have. And Betcher, for anybody that doesn't know, Betcher won the walk-on award, the best walk-on player in the entire country in 2025. So everything that he's built up to this point, Betcher was one of the best walk-ons in the entire country, and then playing at such a high level. High instinctual, his athleticism actually is very underrated. I know that his RAS score kind of came out and everything, and it's probably a little bit in the 6s, if not the 7s, and so it's a little bit underwhelming when you see it, but his athleticism shows up, and a lot of that is just because his smarts, and I would just say he's a little bit more of an athletic Josie Jewell, a little bit more of an athletic Josie Jewell, and I would definitely be so forward in the 4th round. As far as Josiah Trotter, yes, sign me up on a Josiah Trotter. Funny enough, and Sean Payton loves connections, and I don't know if this will be a thing, and I don't know if people have actually talked about this, Gage, but Sean Payton, if I'm not mistaken, was in Philadelphia, on the staff at Philadelphia, for Jeremiah Trotter's rookie year.
That sounds right.
And so like his first year, second year. So I don't know if that's going to end up being something that they kind of consider, and everything. Obviously, Jeremiah Trotter wasn't exactly the player that he was his rookie year and his sophomore year, but it would definitely be something that I would kind of maybe file away, that maybe with this whole connection thing that, I'm definitely in favor of Trotter there at 62. The other one, of course, is running back.
Yes.
Running back, it feels like might be right there with tight end. Is kind of like the fan favorite, if you will. And I think that there's a very good case, one or two of the running backs that we would like will be there at 62, or maybe three will be there at 62.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, I know you're probably going to have some bias on this one.
Maybe.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. But go ahead. Say yours a little bit, and then.
I mean, I'm a Mike Washington guy. I understand the fumble issues. I get it. But what the dude shows on tape with his vision, his burst, his explosiveness, given what Denver runs from a schematic perspective and what they're looking for from a running back, Mike Washington makes a ton of sense. And Sean Payton talked about this last year. He had Bashal Tutin as a guy who he really, really liked coming out of college, but Tutin had some fumbling issues coming out. Payton said, those are correctable. Here is a perfect opportunity for you to put your money where your mouth is and get a player who's got really high upside in Mike Washington.
There was no player at the Senior Bowl that had a better week at running back than Mike Washington. No player. And I'm telling you, there's a world where Mike Washington will not be there at 62.
Yeah.
There's a world, because after Price, there is no player with a higher ceiling than Washington. So I would not be the least, and I also wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Washington's the one that starts the run. People may say Price and everything, but I would not be surprised if it's actually Washington who starts that run of running backs there on that day too, really forcing it to where they're going to be making a decision on Jonah Coleman and Emmett Johnson. And there is no wrong decision there. I'm just for a second, if I can, the Emmett Johnson discourse is a little bit ill-informed, in my opinion. And that's just because I think his toughness as a runner is very understated. Like is very hated too much. Like it's very hated too much.
Very hated too much.
Yes, very. And I also think too, I understand the RJ Harvey comparisons. I do. But we're talking about also making this a bit of an explosive rushing attack. Right? And the difference between RJ Harvey and Emmett Johnson is the toughness. And also, too, Emmett Johnson, for anybody that had not done any research on this, in 2025, the first year he was actually given a full workload, and in a year that he entered the transfer portal before the season started and came back to Nebraska and had the year that he had, he accounted for 37% of the total yards of Nebraska's offense.
Jesus.
The only person who matched that or was close to that was a player who will be going in the top 10 of this year's NFL draft, Jeremiah Love.
Hello.
Yep. So when we think about players that can handle the workload and everything, fresh off of that, Emmett Johnson can fill that bill. And when you have two refined route runners that are running backs, yeah, I can live with that. I can absolutely live with that. And and then you have, for whatever it's worth, a healthy J.K. Dobbins, and going forward, your trio of running backs that you're going to have for at least 3-4 years down the line is Dobbins, Emmett Johnson, and R.J. Harvey down the line. Give me that all day long. And even Jonah Coleman. Jonah Coleman is a big back, obviously something that the Broncos do need in terms of a big back, but he's a very fleet of foot back for as big as he is, right? As big as Jonah is, his surprising athleticism is what I think people don't talk enough about, is that, you do have his passing ability, you have his pass protection, which is something that I think is Emmett Johnson's biggest weakness, is pass protection. But also that was R.J. Harvey's biggest critique, and all of a sudden he comes into training camp and ends up becoming one of the best pass protectors, if you will, on the team. But Jonah Coleman, his pass protection is really solid, right? His pass protection is really solid. So you put him in the mix with his physical running style, you're still going to have a lot of versatile, I think, weapons in that backfield with, Jonah Coleman, and of course, an R.J. Harvey, and J.K. Dobbins.
I only have one problem with Coleman, and he kind of has that Cam Scattaboo element to him where he wants to run over a guy, but it's not so much vision trying to wait for a rushing lane to develop. He's just looking for contact almost every rep.
And coming from a Nebraska fan, Biggie, he's not. I get it. I get it. I understand where people are coming from, but you never watched him be a tough physical runner. And when he accounted for 37% of the total yards, yeah, that shows you the toughness that he had all throughout that. So I'm biased, obviously, with it being a Nebraska fan, but in watching every single fan, but he's not. I understand the comparisons, I'm sure, but yeah, he is not R.J. Harvey.
They're similar, but they are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those. It's, in a way, they're different, but it's the James Franco of they're the same but different. So in essence, they're different. Yeah. But as far as some other backs, maybe that you would be interested in, what are maybe, for whatever it's worth, that maybe people aren't keeping an eye on that might actually be there at 62?
I mean, at 62, I got to be honest, that kind of taps it out for me as far as players I'd be interested in. If we're moving down towards like that 108, 111 area, you've got your Seth McGowans, you've got your Nick Singletons of the world, you've got your Noah Whittingtons. Maybe one of those guys could make some sense. But I don't know if I'd take another back outside of those guys at 62.
It'll be really interesting to see how high Singleton goes and how low Singleton goes. For anybody that does not know, he broke his ankle. Nick Singleton broke his ankle the week of the Senior Bowl. Very unfortunate news. And we will see how much that affects his draft stock. As far as Katron Allen, wouldn't be surprised if you actually have Katron Allen in the same tier as maybe Emmett Johnson and Jonah Coleman. Wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he specifically is in that grouping of of both of them. Because I think once Penn State committed to that rushing attack late in the year, which also affected their offensive line, which is a really good offensive line, they really went into the fact of Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, and you really got a chance to see that offense excel finally. After the coaching change, if you will. As far as I want to talk about this, Gage, there's a world where, because of the fact that they took a corner and it was not on our radar of taking Jahdae Barron, there's a world they surprise us. And I have 3 players in mind, and when I say surprise, it's going to come as a surprise, but it shouldn't, because every single time they've said we like what we have, they have addressed said position by taking them in the draft, right?
Yep.
So, I will phrase this in a way. Do I think that they trade a wide receiver? No. Would I be surprised if they trade a wide receiver?
No.
So, that leads me to this. I think Chris Bell is a very under the radar pick that might be in some consideration at 62 if he is there. We talk about how Pat Bryant could potentially be the Courtland Sutton replacement, but there is no player. The moment you draft him, there is no player who would be the perfect Courtland Sutton replacement than Chris Bell.
Spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a spicy one for sure, man. I don't know. Just given where this roster is,
I know.
But I like the player.
I know. But we said that about the quarterback room, Gage. We like the quarterback room.
Yeah.
And, sure enough, Sean Payton and the whole crew said, yeah, we like what we have. But hold my beer as I just draft, Jade Barron, who's a good player. Again, like Jade Barron is a great player. And I think we'll probably see him maybe be the true joker of that defensive back room, probably in 2026, if you will. But it's definitely something. It's definitely something that I'm at least keeping an eye on in terms of some of that room as far as. So I wouldn't be surprised. Because they don't surprise me anymore at this point. I got another one for you. This one might actually happen. Caleb Banks.
Ooh, I could see it. You could have a future need there. I could see it.
Caleb Banks, he had like his ankle injury. And keep in mind, these are players I know were injured, but there's going to be a reason why they would be there at 62.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could, man. You really could.
The value of Chris Bell and Caleb Banks is probably too damn hard to ignore when it comes to even players like a Mike Washington or some of these other players, right? And obviously the one that tips it is health at that point, right?
Yeah.
But it's just the value would be so crazy for a guy like a Chris Bell or Caleb Banks at 62.
Caleb Banks will be sweet, man.
You want to talk about?
I said future need. You really have a need there right now, honestly, after losing JFM. Even if you feel good about Wazarike, I mean, Caleb Banks could honestly slide in there and be a perfect starter.
Yeah.
It's all about health.
It's all about health. And they definitely may not be some may be upset, but also some would also definitely not be a huge fan of it, Michael, of course.
Well, come on. Caleb Banks wouldn't be the sexiest pick in the world, but if you're a trench nerd, man, you would love the pick.
And I got another one for you.
Hit me.
Because I think that there's a chance he's also not there at 62. But if he is, I wouldn't bat an eye. Jennings Dunker.
Ooh, God. I mean, it would be par for the course, man.
Is this the year?
Is this the year they finally do it? Oh, dude.
Although, to be fair, if they're actually taking him, I don't think they're taking him to be a tackle. I think that they would be taking him to be the Powers replacement.
I could see that. I definitely could. I know there's going to be people saying that Dunker would do good moving inside, but
he played guard and tackle at Iowa.
Say again?
He played guard and tackle at Iowa, and he never allowed a sack.
I feel like if you're going to take him to be a developmental player, you've got Bowles and Powers Bowles and McGlinchey who are older players. I feel like maybe you're thinking about him as possibly your right tackle in the future, but who knows? Maybe you do kick him inside. Ooh, that could be fun, man. I just started kind of getting into the offensive line tape, and Dunker was one of the first ones I watched.
And one of those players that they did meet with, it's very fascinating, but something to monitor, is Emmanuel Pregnon.
Ooh, interesting. I haven't really gotten into him a whole lot. I've watched maybe one game's worth of highlights on him. But yeah, that could be an intriguing one.
Yeah, definitely. Any other positions? I had to get that out of there before we kind of wrap things up.
For sure. As far as positions go, I mean, safety is definitely one I think we need to kind of keep an eye on here. Maybe Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. I've kind of heard that name floated around just because, what's going to happen with Brandon Jones long term. So that's another one I've kind of heard through the grapevine. But I just feel like you're looking at your tight ends, your running backs, your off-ball linebackers, maybe defensive line. Those are all the big positions you're looking at.
I got another one, too, if you're going to throw out safety corner, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what the future will hold for some of these players, Keontae Scott.
Keontae Scott. I've got him as kind of a mid-round corner. I feel like he's somebody who maybe you could think about as more of a nickel player. I don't know how he would fit as a safety.
But he's corner safety. So gives you that flexibility for whatever they decide to do with Barron, whatever they decide to do with something I would not be upset with is Keontae. He's actually one of my favorite prospects to watch in this entire draft.
I think he kind of, again, more profiles as like a nickel corner, though.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's wrong. But I definitely I love his toughness. And then we should probably end the show on a very positive note and talk about something that is very important for Broncos country. And that is, of course,
let's go Broncos! God bless Bo Nix!
How good is Bo Nix?
Really good. Really good. That Mike just put that as one of our topics and didn't really elaborate on what we're going to discuss with it. Just right. How good is Bo Nix? Really good. Amazing.
Right.
Franchise quarterback. But in all seriousness, I think Mike's talking about relative to the rest of the league. Yeah. How good is Bo Nix? What tier quarterback is he really? I think if we're looking at this from, A tier being the top echelon of quarterbacks, and let's just say, F tier being the crappiest or the crappy, I think Bo's really, really high B tier. He's shown a lot of promise and upside. The physical talent's definitely there. The mobility, his arm talent was super underrated coming out of Oregon. And I think people are finally starting to wake up to that. He's showing on tape that he can make elite deep throws into tight windows. He's got the physical tools. He's got the mental makeup of a franchise quarterback. It's just all about being consistent with his footwork, being consistent with some of his accuracy. I just feel like all that stuff, that'll come together over time. He's shown so much to the point where you can't not call him a franchise quarterback.
I think at this point, if you don't have him as a safe top 13, you're a non-ball knower at this point. And frankly, I ruffled some feathers, obviously, when it came to, when I posted it, but it's just it's going to sound rough. It's going to sound rough around the edges, but it's true. For what he's done in the first two seasons, if you don't believe that Bo Nix is a franchise quarterback now, you will never believe that he's a franchise quarterback. At any point in his career, you will never believe that he's a franchise quarterback. He's been probably one of the fastest risers to be a top 13 quarterback that we've seen in some time. And And I think that when you look at it from the standpoint of everything that he's done, shutting up narratives, shutting up the deep ball accuracy, which he does at times need to work on, but it's just like he's still relatively good. I mean, for as much as we hate Pro Football Focus, he was one of the best deep ball passers the last 2 seasons in the league. And also he led the NFL in passing attempts the last two years. So they clearly value that arm. Sean Payton and Davis Webb clearly, value that arm. So I am very much in favor of the fact that, Bo Nix is a top 13 quarterback. And I think if their trend is accurate with Bo and everything that we've seen the last 2 years, Bo Nix will finish in the top 7 of quarterbacks after this upcoming year. And one large reason why is because of Jalen Waddle. Waddle is everything that Bo Nix is needed at the quarterback position for him to take his game to the next level. Everything Waddle does well, everything Bo does well. He's good in zone. Waddle's exceptional in zone. You need a home run threat, Waddle's the home run threat. You need a yak monster, Waddle's your yak monster. Every single blade of grass will be covered now with your wide receiver room, and I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Bo Nix is still leading the league in passing attempts just because they have a lot of mouths to feed, and those a lot of mouths to feed happen to probably be your wide receiver room and R.J. Harvey in the passing game. And, of course, featuring Evan Ingram here and there. Bo Nix will be, and I mean will be, in the MVP conversation when all is said and done after 2026.
And most importantly, Jalen Waddle gives you a threat over the middle of the field. In Bo's rookie season, he made a living on dagger concepts and in-breaking routes. Last year, we didn't see that as much, and I feel like part of it was because Devon Vele was kind of Bo's go-to guy on those over-the-middle throws. Now you've got Jalen Waddle, who makes Devon Vele look like a you-know-what over the middle. So I feel like that's going to really open up this offense and make the passing game even more dynamic. And we got to talk about the run game as well, because the run game was just absolute garbage in the back half of last season when Bo finally started to put it together. And in the first half of the year, it kind of felt like the run game was carrying the offense while Bo was figuring things out. The passing game was getting in sync, yada, yada, yada. If you can have both of those elements of the offense playing well at the same time, there's no reason why this can't be a top 5 offense in the league.
Exactly. Or that Bo Nix actually ends up finishing in the MVP conversation, not winning it, because he probably won't because of Sean Payton, but he probably will be in that MVP conversation.
Why couldn't he win it?
You know why I'm saying why he couldn't win.
Yeah. I mean, I just think about all those MVPs Drew Brees won. And at the end of the day, MVPs become which quarterback has the best stats. And if Bo Nix puts up the best numbers.
You're preaching to the choir. It's just the Sean Payton stuff and everything. Him obviously not being up for Coach of the Year. It's just easy to kind of make that correlation to everything.
Yes. And the one who actually did win Coach of the Year is in the news today for some off-the-field extracurricular activity, if you will.
The week of the owners' meetings. Anyway, I think that'll probably do it for here at another show of 5280 Podcast. Reminder to everybody that I will be on the altitude adjustment show here in a couple minutes. We
better get you on there.
So make sure you tune into that over here at the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube channel, where it'll be led by Mario Batanzi and Patrick Chiotti. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully we'll see if we could be able to have a healthy 5280 podcast with Glenn Hauser and Mundungus next week for another episode of 5280. But until then, stay frosty, my friends.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come